Eleanor." My father hissed through clenched teeth, his voice cutting through the applause like a razor. "You just threw away everything. Everything. But it was they who had stolen everything from me, my project. My dignity, my name right in front of hundreds of people. That night didn't end my story. It ignited it. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm Eleanor Vance. 30 years old. For the past 8 years, I poured my soul into Vance and Associate Sauer family's architecture firm. It wasn't just a job. It was supposed to be my legacy. My dream. To design structures that breathe with the earth, not battle against it. Riverbend Eco Resort was my vision. My proof that sustainability and beauty could coexist. I believed, naively perhaps, that if I brought it to life, my family would finally see me. Finally recognize the merit in my unconventional ideas. The 60th anniversary gala was meant to be my moment. Spotlights gleamed off crystal chandeliers. The air hummed with the clinking of champagne flutes, and the polished silver cutlery reflected the ambition of 100 esteemed guests. I stood quietly near the back, my heart pounding, a mixture of hope and a familiar dread churning in my purse. My stomach as my father took the stage. My name teetered on the tip of my tongue, waiting to be spoken. Waiting to be acknowledged for the years of tireless work I'd invested in the firm, particularly in the project about to be unveiled. Instead, I heard Michael Vance, the visionary. Behind Riverbend, my brother Michael rose from his seat at the main table, a self-satisfied smirk on his face, and began to walk towards the podium. He basked in applause meant for me. I couldn't breathe. It was a physical punch to the gut. My father Robert continued, his voice resonating with an almost theatrical pride, praising Michael's business acumen, his foresight, his relentless drive, calling me his own daughter. A passionate and dedicated architect, invaluable technical support. 3 years of sleepless nights, meticulous research, countless personal sacrifices. And a lifetime of dedication to my craft, reduced to a dismissive footnote. I was frozen, completely erased. The world tilted, the glittering ballroom spinning, in a nauseating blur. The polite applause swelled into a roaring ovation, not for me, but for my older brother, Michael, who now stood confidently beside our father. Michael, the business-minded brother who barely knew the difference between a load-bearing wall and a curtain wall. The one who had consistently mocked my tree-hugging ideas, yet here he was, being credited with my project. The very embodiment of those crazy ideas. Michael has been the true spirit of this endeavor, Robert declared, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. A gesture of familial pride that felt like a physical blow to me. A painful affirmation of where I truly stood in their eyes. His business acumen, his foresight, his relentless drive have guided Riverbend from a mere concept to this groundbreaking reality. Eleanor, of course, he added as an afterthought. Gesturing vaguely in my direction, his gaze not quite meeting mine. As if I were merely a convenient prop in their grand narrative, has been invaluable as a technical support. Technical support. The words echoed in the cavernous ballroom, branding themselves onto my soul. 8 years of my life, hundreds of sleepless nights poring over blueprints, countless discarded sketches piled high in my private ecolab. Meticulous research into complex geothermal systems and rainwater harvesting techniques, endless, often. Frustrating pitches to reluctant clients and skeptical contractors within Vance and Associates. 3 years of pouring my very soul, every creative fiber, every ounce of intellectual energy into the Riverbend project, a project I envisioned as a blueprint for a better future, all reduced to technical support. The phrase wasn't just dismissive. It was an act of profound erasure, a public declaration that my contributions were utterly insignificant. My identity irrelevant, my passion a mere tool to be wielded by others. Then came the final, crushing blow, delivered with a smug, almost triumphant air. "And it is with immense pride," Robert announced, his voice filled with a faux solemnity that was sickeningly performative, "that I announce Michael's promotion to vice president, effective immediately. He is, without a doubt, the future of Vance and Associates." The cheers were deafening. Flashbulbs popped, blinding bursts of light against the elegant backdrop. Michael basked in the adulation, a conquering hero, shaking hands, accepting congratulations from industry peers who were blissfully unaware of the theft unfolding before their eyes. But I was dying inside. It felt as though a steel fist had clamped around my heart, squeezing the air out of my lungs until I was lightheaded with a mixture of shock and fury. My vision blurred, the faces of smiling socialites and nodding executives merging into a distorted, oppressive crowd. I was trapped in a living nightmare, watching my deepest dream, my proudest professional achievement, my very legacy being handed over to someone else. Someone utterly undeserving by the very people who were supposed to cherish and uplift me. To champion my talents, it was more than a betrayal. It was an annihilation of my professional self, a public execution of my creative spirit. The years of feeling underestimated, overlooked, exploited, every subtle slight, every dismissive comment, every ignored proposal, it all converged in that single gut-wrenching moment. I was erased. And I was about to find out how deeply that erasure ran. How far their deception truly extended into the foundations of my life and our family. The Vance family was built on a foundation of granite and rigid expectations. We weren't just architects. We were the Vances, a name synonymous with venerable, albeit conventional, structures that dotted the American landscape. From my earliest memories, our dinner table conversations revolved around property values, client acquisitions, and the legacy of Vance and Associates. It was a world of spreadsheets, quarterly reports, and networking events. Artistic vision was secondary to profitability. My father, Robert, the current CEO, was a man carved from that same granite, unyielding, focused solely on profit margins and upholding the family name, often at the expense of genuine innovation. He saw architecture not as an art form, but as a stable, lucrative business, a means to maintain the family's social standing and financial comfort. Our house in Westchester, a grand colonial with perfectly manicured lawns and an imposing wrought iron gate, felt more like a monument to the firm's prestige than a warm, welcoming family home. Every painting on the wall, every piece of furniture seemed chosen for its statement of wealth rather than its comfort or beauty, Grandpa. Arthur, on the other hand, was my refuge. He was the firm's founder, a brilliant architect in his own right, but with a twinkle in his eye and a quiet appreciation for beauty and progress. He had built Vance and Associates from the ground up, starting in a small downtown office, working tirelessly through the lean years. But unlike my father, he saw the industry evolving, understood the urgent need for sustainable practices long before it was fashionable. It was Grandpa Arthur who first handed me a worn copy of Frank Lloyd Wright's autobiography, who patiently explained the elegance of biomimicry in design, showing me how nature held the blueprints for true efficiency. He was the one who listened intently to my wild ideas about self-sufficient buildings, vertical farms, and communities powered entirely by renewable energy, when no one else in my family would spare a moment. He was the only one who truly saw me, truly heard my passion for green architecture. A passion that felt alien and often ridiculed in our polished, conservative home. He would take me on walks through old industrial neighborhoods, pointing out forgotten green spaces, or to visit old, dilapidated barns in upstate New York, pointing out their natural ventilation, their sturdy timber frames, teaching me to see the inherent intelligence in traditional sustainable construction long before eco-friendly became a buzzword. His study, a cavernous room filled with towering bookshelves, antique maps, and architectural models in their old brownstone in Brooklyn, was my favorite place to escape to on weekends. It smelled of old books and gentle wisdom. My mother, Susan, was the family's social architect, meticulously curating appearances. She hosted lavish company events, organized charity galas, okay, and tirelessly ensured that the Vance image remained pristine, untainted by scandal or eccentricities. Her constant refrain to me was to be more practical, stop dreaming so much, and learn to fit in. Every unconventional sketch I proudly showed her, every passionate argument for solar panels or recycled materials, was met with a sigh, a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand, and a gentle but firm pushback towards what works, meaning what is profitable and palatable for our existing clientele. Eleanor, darling, she'd often say, her voice sugary sweet but laced with steel. You have to understand, architecture is a business, not a commune. We have a reputation to uphold. People expect a certain Vance standard. It was a subtle, insidious pressure to conform, to mute my own voice for the sake of family harmony, or rather, family facade. She saw my passion as a potential embarrassment, a deviation from the acceptable path. My older brother Michael was the golden child, the anointed heir. He'd graduated with a business degree from a prestigious Ivy League school, exactly what our father had wanted, and seamlessly slid into a role in real estate development, often working closely with Vance and Associates. Michael had an innate charisma, a smooth way with words, and an uncanny ability to charm clients and investors, but his understanding of architecture was superficial at best. He saw buildings purely as commodities, as investments to be flipped, not living spaces to be thoughtfully designed. Eleanor, your eco stuff is cute, he'd once scoffed. Flipping through my sketches of a passive solar home, a genuine spark of excitement in my eyes. But people want square footage, not a glorified greenhouse. Sustainability sells, but profit closes deals, and that's what Vance and Associates is about. His dismissive tone cut deep, reinforcing the unspoken message from my parents. You're good, Eleanor, but Michael is the one with the real vision, the real future for the firm. Michael was always at the center of attention during family dinners, regaling everyone with exaggerated stories of his deals, while my quiet contributions to actual architectural projects were barely acknowledged, or worse, attributed to the team effort he supposedly led despite the constant undercurrent of being underestimated and subtly sidelined. I poured myself into my work at Vance and Associates. I was the silent engine, the tireless researcher, the one who meticulously crafted technical solutions for projects that my father and Michael would then proudly present as their own. I worked late into the night, mastering complex software like Revit and Grasshopper, devouring every textbook and article on sustainable design I could find. I took online courses through MIT's OpenCourseWare, attended specialized workshops on everything from graywater recycling to biophilic design, all on my own time, with my own money, often commuting after a full day at the office to learn from leading experts. My colleagues, mostly older men steeped in traditional methods, would often raise an eyebrow at my unconventional approaches, or politely humor my enthusiasm, but I persisted, driven by a deep conviction that this was the future, not just for the planet, but for architecture itself. I wanted to prove them wrong, to show them that innovation didn't have to mean sacrificing profit, that ethical design could also be economically viable in secret. Away from the judgmental eyes of my family and the conservative atmosphere of Vance and Associates, I nurtured my true passion in a small rented workshop on the outskirts of town. It was a dusty, cluttered space in an old industrial complex, filled with the comforting smell of wood, clay, and recycled materials. Far from the polished glass and steel of the downtown Vance and Associates headquarters, this place was mine. Here, I experimented with reclaimed timber, built intricate models of zero-energy homes using solar panels and rainwater harvesting systems, and sketched out grand visions of self-sufficient communities. The walls were covered with blueprints, complex diagrams of wind turbines, and samples of recycled concrete and sustainable insulation. It was my sanctuary, a place where my creativity could truly breathe without judgment, where my ideas could take tangible form. I called it my eco-lab, a defiant whisper against the conventional roar of my family firm. A personal haven where I truly felt alive, where my ideas flowed freely and unhindered. The Riverbend Eco Resort was born in that lab. It started as a personal challenge: how to design a luxury resort that left virtually no environmental footprint, blending seamlessly with its natural surroundings while offering unparalleled comfort. I spent 3 years obsessively researching the optimal site in a remote, pristine natural area, analyzing its unique microclimates, studying local ecosystems, and meticulously drafting plans for structures that were truly integrated with nature, powered entirely by renewable energy and harvested their own water. I pored over topographical maps, analyzed sun paths, consulted with environmental engineers and local ecologists, often traveling to the site on weekends, sketching landscapes and envisioning how buildings could emerge from the earth rather than simply sitting on it. This wasn't just a project, my manifesto, a tangible demonstration that beauty and sustainability could coexist, even thrive in commercial architecture. I believed, perhaps with a touch of youthful naivete, that if I built it, if I could make it real, undeniable, my family would finally understand the immense value of my vision. I even took the initiative to network, to discreetly approach potential investors who shared my vision for responsible, ethical development, carefully gauging their interest in such a groundbreaking concept. I'd meet them for coffee in quiet cafes downtown, away from the prying eyes of the firm, showing them my early concepts, gauging their enthusiasm. My father, Robert, ever the astute businessman, eventually sensed the potential for a lucrative new revenue stream from the Riverbend concept, even if he didn't fully grasp the environmental philosophy behind it. He began to take an interest in Riverbend, but always on his terms, always with an ulterior motive. "Eleanor, report every single detail to me," he'd demand, his eyes glinting with a calculating look that chilled me even then. "Every sketch, every meeting. This is a family project after all, and I need to ensure it meets fan standards." He appointed Michael as business consultant for the project, ostensibly to handle the financial projections and client relations, to make my eco dreams palatable to the market. But I quickly realized Michael's role was less about consulting and more about extracting information, dissecting my ideas and presenting them as his own at internal meetings. He'd sit in on my calls with potential eco-conscious investors, nod sagely, then later criticize my idealism to our father, even as I saw elements of my impractical designs subtly appearing in his own internal presentations. He'd take my detailed calculations for energy efficiency, my carefully researched material lists, and then casually toss them into a company report under his name, or under the general umbrella of Vance and Associates Innovation Team. It was a slow, agonizing process of seeing my work diluted, then claimed I told myself it was family. I told myself this was how things worked in big firms, that I was just paying my dues, proving my worth. I told myself that eventually, when Riverbend was a resounding success, my efforts would be recognized, my contributions acknowledged. I had always been the quiet, diligent one, the one who put her head down and got the job done, believing that hard work and undeniable talent would ultimately speak for themselves. I stayed silent for too long, fueled by a deep-seated hope for my father's approval, for Michael's respect, for my mother's understanding. I clung to the hope that this project, my magnum opus, would finally be the key to unlocking their recognition. I clung to the hope that my dedication to the family business, to their legacy, would somehow earn me a place at their table, a voice in their decisions, a true seat at the Vance table. That hope, however, was about to be irrevocably shattered. Shattered into 1,000 pieces under the dazzling lights of the 60th anniversary gala. The congratulatory murmurs faded. replaced by the clinking of glasses and the low hum of conversation. But for me, the world had gone silent, save for the deafening roar in my own ears. Michael stood on stage, accepting accolades for my project, my vision, my 3 years of relentless work. With a smug, entitled grin that felt like a physical violation. My father, Robert, beamed beside him, radiating a paternal pride that felt like a physical assault. A complicit nod to the theft. This wasn't just another overlooked idea. This wasn't just another dismissed suggestion. This was the culmination of everything I had poured myself into. The very essence of my professional identity ripped away and handed to my brother. A man who, just months ago, had called my concepts pretty, but financially unviable. The words technical support echoed in the cavernous ballroom, branding themselves onto my soul, a hot, agonizing pain. It was a profound act of erasure, a public declaration that my contributions were utterly insignificant, my identity irrelevant, my passion a mere tool to be wielded by others. The betrayal was so raw, so complete, it left no room for tears, only a cold, hard knot of rage coiling in my gut. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms, a futile attempt to ground myself in the swirling chaos. I looked at my mother, Susan, across the room. She was smiling, nodding along with the other wives, perfectly oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant of the injustice unfolding. Her perfectly coiffed hair and elegant gown seemed to mock me. A symbol of the superficial world she inhabited, where appearances trumped truth. Had she no idea what her son and husband were doing? Or worse, did she know and simply not care, prioritizing the family's carefully constructed image over her own daughter's dignity and emotional well-being? Her placid indifference felt like a second betrayal, a quiet complicity that cut deeper than any sharp word confirming her silent approval of their charade. Then I saw Olivia, my younger sister, normally so guarded, so adept at playing the family role, had gone pale. Her eyes met mine across the crowded ballroom, wide with a flicker of shock, then quickly darted away. Her hand unconsciously flying to her mouth, a subtle gesture almost imperceptible to anyone else. But I saw it. Even she, the ever-compliant, the one who always tried to keep the peace, could not hide her discomfort. She knew, or at least she suspected. Her quick glance away was a confirmation of sorts, a silent acknowledgement of the charade, a fleeting moment of connection that felt both agonizing and strangely validating. It was the only shred of genuine human connection I felt in that cold, glittering room. A memory flashed, sharp and vivid, cutting through the haze of shock. Dad, leaning over my shoulder in my studio at the firm, scrutinizing my early sketches for Riverbend. "Eleanor, you need to trust the family," he'd said, his voice smooth, paternal. His hand resting on my shoulder in a seemingly reassuring gesture that now felt utterly repulsive. "This is a big project, a family project. Need to present a united front." He'd said it so many times, always when he was subtly prying for more information, more details, more of my work. He would subtly shift my drawings, add his own annotations, little red marks that subtly altered the original intent, making it his. "You need to learn to work as a team," Michael had chimed in, equally insidious, subtly dismissing my individual contributions while absorbing my ideas like a sponge, as if my creative sparks were merely raw materials for him to refine and claim, like an uncredited factory worker toiling for his benefit. I remembered pitching the initial concept to Dad in his sprawling office, the hopeful tremor in my voice as I described the geothermal heating, the vertical gardens, the self-sustaining water systems that would make Riverbend truly revolutionary. He'd patted my back. "Good ideas, Eleanor. Very ambitious. We'll see what we can incorporate." Incorporate, a polite euphemism for stealing, for dissecting my vision and reassembling it under their brand. Every one of those ambitious ideas was now part of Michael's grand presentation. packaged as his own genius, delivered with a confidence that mocked my quiet struggle. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, like ashes. My passion, my ingenuity, my future, all neatly bundled and handed over to someone else. To be paraded as their own, the culmination of it all. The announcement of Michael's promotion was the final devastating drop. Not only had they stolen my work, they were now rewarding the thief, placing him in a position of power that would cement his control over the firm, effectively solidifying my insignificance within the very company I had poured my life into. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about years of quiet dismissal, of being told my dreams were too much, my ideas too radical, while secretly, those very ideas were being harvested, repackaged, and sold under another name. The weight of 8 years of unacknowledged labor, of suppressed creativity, of relentless struggle for recognition, crashed down on me with the force of a tidal wave. I saw my entire professional life, my deepest aspirations laid out as a sacrifice. On the altar of my family's ambition and deceit, a cold, clear resolve began to crystallize within me. The rage, sharp and clean, cut through the shock and pain. No more. I would not pretend this was okay. I would not allow myself to be a technical support in my own life, an uncredited ghost in my own story. The silence I had maintained for years, born of hope and a desperate desire for approval, was finally irrevocably broken. This was it. This was the moment I stopped enduring and started fighting back. The fight wouldn't be loud or emotional. It would be precise, calculated, and aimed directly at the very legacy they held so dear. The carefully constructed illusion they had built on my back. I would reclaim what was mine, not just the project, but my voice, my worth, my entire future. I don't remember leaving the gala. The overwhelming urge to escape, to breathe air that wasn't thick with lies and betrayal, propelled me out of the ballroom, past the murmuring crowds, and into the cool autumn night. One moment, I was a ghost at my own funeral. The next, I was speeding down the highway, the city lights blurring into streaks of angry, desperate color. My phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from Michael, then Robert, then Susan. Each vibration was a fresh stab of irritation, a reminder of the suffocating web they had woven. I silenced it, tossing it onto the passenger seat like a live grenade, wanting only the quiet roar of the engine. Their messages, which I later scanned with a detached disgust, began with feigned concern. Eleanor, are you okay? You left so suddenly. Is everything all right? Then morphed into dismissive gaslighting. You're overreacting, darling. This is how business works. Don't be so sensitive. And finally, outright threats. If you make a scene, you'll burn all your bridges, Eleanor. You'll have nothing. You won't work in this town again. Nothing. They had left me with nothing but the truth. And the truth, I realized, was my most potent weapon. Their desperation was palpable, a testament to the fact that they knew, deep down, what they had done. But they expected me to back down, twofold, to accept my place as the technical support once more. They believed my silence was a given, my compliance guaranteed. They were wrong, terribly, utterly wrong. The next morning, the sun felt like an unwelcome intruder, its bright rays searing my eyes. My head throbbed, not from alcohol, but from the sheer, crushing weight of betrayal. Sleep had been impossible, my mind racing through years of subtle manipulations, connecting dots I had previously ignored. I didn't want to see anyone, talk to anyone, especially not my family. The thought of their voices, their false concern, made my stomach churn. But then a single text message popped up from a number I rarely saw. Grandpa Arthur. Eleanor, coffee. My place. 9 a.m. Don't be late. Lemon poppy seed muffins are waiting. No pressure, no guilt, just an implicit understanding. A lifeline offered without a word spoken. Grandpa Arthur's house was a sanctuary. It was an old Victorian in a quiet, tree-lined street in Brooklyn Heights, its brick facade softened by ivy. Inside, it smelled of old books, gentle wisdom, and the faint, comforting scent of pipe tobacco and old paper. He was waiting in his sunroom, a steaming mug of artisanal coffee in his hand. Sunlight streaming through the leaded glass windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. His eyes, still sharp and perceptive at 82, studied my face, seeing beyond the brave facade I tried to put on. Rough night, huh, kiddo? He said, his voice gruff, but kind, a familiar warmth that instantly eased some of the tension in my chest. He didn't ask what happened, just looked at me, a silent invitation to speak, to unburden myself. I didn't say anything at first, just collapsed into the worn armchair, its familiar comfort enveloping me, the raw pain and indignation tearing at my throat made speech difficult. Then the dam broke. The words tumbled out, a torrent of suppressed anger and anguish. I recounted everything, from Michael's sneering dismissals in early project meetings to my father's calculating exploitation of my ideas, culminating in the public humiliation at the gala. I spoke of the years of subtle undermining, the way my ideas were always too ambitious or not practical, only to reappear later under Michael's name. I spoke of my passion being treated as a naive eccentricity, an indulgence. I told him about the sleepless nights in my ecolab, the private meetings with potential investors I'd cultivated, the quiet desperation for their approval for a shred of recognition. I laid bare every instance of their insidious appropriation, every casual slight, every broken promise. The way they constantly shifted the goalposts of success, always just out of my reach. Grandpa Arthur listened patiently, his gaze unwavering, nodding occasionally, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. When I finished, the silence was heavy, filled only with the soft ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. I had my suspicions, Eleanor, he said finally, his voice low, tinged with a deep sadness. Robert has always been acquisitive. He learned from a different school of thought than I did. And Michael, well, he's a chip off the old block, just without the talent or the genuine vision. He's all presentation, no substance. He sighed, running a hand over his silver hair, a gesture of profound weariness. But I never thought they'd go this far, stealing your intellectual property, publicly humiliating you. Undermining your entire career, that's a new low, even for them. It's a disgrace to the Vance name, the name I built on integrity. His voice held a profound disappointment, not just for my suffering, but for the moral decay of his own son and grandson. A stain on the legacy he had worked so hard to create. He pushed a stack of old, leather-bound journals across the table, their pages yellowed with age and use, filled with his meticulous script. I've been watching. I've been keeping records. When I founded Vance and Associates, I always believed in recognizing true talent in nurturing innovation. I established an internal innovation fund for employees whose ideas significantly contributed to new projects, to ensure they were properly compensated and credited. And I always believed in transparency, in clear lines of ownership. He opened one of the journals, flipping through pages filled with his neat, cursive handwriting. You see, Eleanor, the Riverbend concept? I remember when you first pitched it to me, when you were just an eager intern. I even made a small personal investment from my own funds to help you develop some of your initial research, to give your ideas a head start. He pointed to an entry dated nearly 10 years ago. A small line detailing a discrete transfer of funds to a special innovation project account, specifically earmarked for Eleanor Vance's sustainable architecture concepts. My eyes widened. You did? A wave of shock, then immense gratitude washed over me. Grandpa Arthur, the silent observer, the quiet presence I had always looked up to, had been my champion all along, quietly laying the groundwork for my future. Even when I didn't know it, he'd seen my potential and invested in it without expecting anything in return, of course. Saw the spark in you, and I earmarked certain percentages of potential profits from any truly groundbreaking, sustainable projects for the lead innovator. That includes Riverbend. It's all documented. Robert and Michael were supposed to manage it, to disperse the funds and ensure proper credit. But it appears they've been redirecting those funds, along with your rightful credit, to their own pockets and Michael's advancement. He showed me chilling entries in his ledgers, meticulously cross-referenced with internal company reports that had somehow omitted my name, or vaguely mentioned team efforts when it was clearly my singular vision. There were even references to green initiative bonuses that should have gone directly to me but never did, disappearing into the firm's murky accounts, disguised as operational expenses or consulting fees. The sheer audacity of their deception, laid bare in my grandfather's meticulous records, was almost unfathomable. It wasn't just opportunism, it was a carefully orchestrated scheme. And there's more, Grandpa Arthur continued, his voice hardening, his eyes holding a steely glint. I rarely saw a flash of the shrewd businessman he once was. I suspected Robert was taking credit for some of my early forward-thinking designs too. After I stepped back from day-to-day operations, he repackaged them, stripped them of their original sustainable intent, and presented them as his own modernizations to attract a new generation of clients. The firm's reputation, Eleanor, has been built on a foundation of borrowed brilliance. They've been riding on the coattails of true visionaries, myself, and now you, for far too long. This isn't just about Riverbend. This is a pattern of deception that has defined the very core of Vance and Associates under Robert's leadership, a legacy built on sand and lies. He pointed to faded blueprints from the 1970s, strikingly similar to those he had drawn decades ago, now labeled with Robert's name, modernized just enough to escape immediate detection by the casual observer, but unmistakably the work of his youth. The revelations were a cold splash of water, shocking me into a terrifying yet liberating clarity. This wasn't just about Riverbend. This was a pattern, a systemic exploitation of talent. A family business built on a carefully constructed facade of integrity and innovation that concealed a rotten core of deceit and theft. The years of feeling unseen, unheard, being told my ideas were too out there while they quietly poached them, suddenly made agonizing sense. My silence, my compliance, my desperate yearning for their approval had only enabled their deception, turning me into an unwitting accomplice in my own exploitation. The illusion of family loyalty had blinded me, preventing me from seeing the predatory nature of their actions. "We need a lawyer, Grandpa," I said, my voice steady, determined, a newfound strength resonating within me, replacing the fear and self-doubt. A good one who understands intellectual property, and one who isn't afraid to take on Vance and Associates. No matter how powerful they seem, no matter how many strings they think they can pull. Grandpa Arthur smiled, a rare, fierce glint. In his eyes, a mirroring of my own resolve. "Already thought of that, kiddo. I've made some calls. His name is David Chen, at Chen and Associates, a top firm in Midtown. It's the best in the city for intellectual property cases. And he's known for his discreet yet devastatingly effective methods. He doesn't go for flashy headlines unless absolutely necessary. He goes for the jugular, precisely and surgically, leaving no room for doubt or escape." This wasn't just about reclaiming my project. This was about reclaiming my name, my honor, and the truth that had been buried under decades of family secrets and ambition. I was no longer the quiet, agreeable Eleanor, the overlooked architect. I was an architect with a stolen vision, and I was coming for what was mine. The quiet girl who had endured years of belittlement, who had clung to a desperate hope for validation, was gone. In her place stood a woman with a clear purpose, a burning desire for justice, and an unwavering commitment to build her future on a foundation of truth, no matter the cost to the Vance family's hollow prestige. My meeting with David Chen, the intellectual property lawyer Grandpa Arthur recommended, was a whirlwind of legal jargon, evidence, presentation, and a growing sense of vindication. David was sharp, methodical, and possessed a quiet intensity that matched my own burgeoning resolve. He meticulously reviewed Grandpa Arthur's journals, every entry, cross-referencing them with my sketches, my email exchanges, the internal company memos I'd subtly kept copies of, and even the crucial audio recordings I'd managed to capture on my phone. Casual conversations where Michael would dismiss my crazy eco ideas, only for Robert to later suggest incorporating them under his supervision. He saw the pattern, the clear evidence of systematic appropriation, the deliberate obfuscation of my contributions, the calculated nature of their theft. "The case is strong, Eleanor," David stated, leaning back in his chair, his eyes gleaming behind his wire-rimmed glasses, a predatory gleam of a lawyer who knew he held the winning hand. "Your father and brother have committed a clear breach of intellectual property, fraud, and potentially even corporate malfeasance. The evidence is overwhelming. We could go public with a lawsuit tomorrow, hit 'em hard. It would be a media circus, but you'd likely win a significant settlement and public acknowledgement. Their careers would be over, their names forever associated with this scandal, a public lawsuit." The thought sent a jolt of both fear and satisfaction through me. It would destroy Vance and Associates, expose my family's dirty laundry to the entire industry, irrevocably shattering their carefully constructed image. But it felt messy. It wasn't about revenge, not truly, not a vengeful scorched earth policy. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my work, and ensuring they faced consequences, not just public humiliation. I wanted them to understand the depth of their betrayal, not just the financial implications. I wanted a surgical strike, a precise unraveling, not a chaotic explosion that would leave too much collateral damage. "There's another option," I said, a plan beginning to form more concretely in my mind, inspired by the cold, calculated way they had stolen my project, their reliance on appearances, a less conventional one that hits them where it hurts most. Their reputation, their legacy, right where they tried to bury mine. I want them to experience the shame of public exposure precisely at the moment of their supposed triumph, just as they forced me to endure it, to feel the weight of every lie they ever told. David's eyebrow quirked, a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. "I'm listening." He knew this was more than just a legal strategy. It was an act of poetic justice, a carefully orchestrated confrontation. The Riverbend Eco-Resort project has its official investor presentation next month. I explained, my voice firm, every word carefully chosen, resonating with conviction. It's their biggest pitch of the year. It's their chance to secure the multi-million-dollar funding they desperately need to expand. It'll be attended by all the major players in the industry, the same architects, developers, and financial institutions who were at the anniversary gala. It's the perfect stage for them to make their grand pronouncements, and for us to make ours, to expose the truth to the very people whose opinions they value most, whose trust they rely on. David's smile slowly widened, a glint of professional admiration in his eyes. "You want to expose them on stage, during their most critical, high-stakes moment, when the world is watching." He understood the profound psychological impact, the irretrievable humiliation it would inflict, a blow far more damaging than any lawsuit could achieve alone. "Precisely," I affirmed, a steely calm settling over me, the kind of calm that comes from absolute conviction, from having nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Not with a lawsuit, not with a screaming match. With the truth. With my truth backed by undeniable facts. I want them to face it publicly, just as they made me face their lie. I want the architects, the investors, the partners they so desperately want to impress, to see exactly who they are and what they've done. To understand that the vision they're investing in is built on a foundation of lies and theft, a facade of integrity concealing deep corruption. Over the next few weeks, David and I worked in secret, meticulously refining our strategy with the precision of a surgeon. We prepared a compelling visual presentation that was both technically flawless and emotionally devastating. It incorporated my original design files, time-stamped emails, and even crucial audio recordings I'd managed to capture on my phone. Casual conversations where Michael would dismiss my crazy eco ideas only for Robert to later suggest, incorporating them under his supervision, subtly hinting at ownership. We found old company documents subtly altered by Robert that proved my early involvement and ownership of core design elements. Tracing the intellectual theft step by step, leaving no room for denial. Grandpa Arthur, bless his heart, tirelessly helped us, providing a notarized statement confirming my foundational contributions and his original intent for the Innovation Fund. A document that would add undeniable weight to our claims and connect their current fraud to a historical pattern. We practiced my delivery repeatedly, refining every pause, every inflection, ensuring my voice remained calm, authoritative, and utterly devoid of personal anger, letting the facts speak for themselves. This wasn't about emotion. It was about irrefutable evidence presented with chilling clarity. We planned every detail from the exact timing of the tech intervention, a discreet signal from David to a sympathetic technician, to the specific slides that would flash across the screen, each one a nail in their coffin. The night of the Riverbend Eco Resort investor presentation arrived, crisp and electric with anticipation. The grand ballroom of the convention center was packed, even more so than the anniversary gala, with a tangible buzz of excitement and high-stakes potential. Dignitaries, potential investors from across the nation, industry titans, and even local and national press, they were all there, ready to hear about the next big thing from Vance and Associates. My father, Robert, looked resplendent in his bespoke suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, an aura of confident authority around him, a man completely in control. Michael, standing beside him, wore the polished, eager smile of a man on the cusp of his greatest triumph, his chest puffed out with self-importance, a picture of manufactured success. They looked like kings, presiding over their kingdom, utterly oblivious to the storm about to break. The truth poised to shatter their carefully constructed reality. I arrived quietly, accompanied by David Chen, who posed as a general attendee, blending seamlessly into the affluent crowd. My heart hammered against my ribs, a primal drumbeat of anticipation and nervous energy. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but beneath it a bedrock of calm determination. This wasn't about anger anymore. It had transmuted into a cold, focused resolve, a quiet power. This was about justice. This was about finally setting the record straight. Not for them, but for myself. For every creative spirit whose work had been stolen. Robert began with his usual polished introduction. A grandiose speech touting the firm's 6-decade legacy and their unwavering commitment to innovation and excellence, to shaping the future of American architecture. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who believed his own lies, who had repeated them so often they had become his truth. He spoke of Vance and Associates as a beacon of integrity and groundbreaking design. Then he proudly introduced Michael, who stepped to the podium, taking center stage. His voice was smooth and confident as he launched into his presentation of Riverbend, outlining his vision, his innovative approach to sustainability, his genius in blending luxury with ecological responsibility. Each word was a fresh insult, each fabricated claim a twist of the knife, reminding me of the years of being silenced, of being forced to witness my own brilliance being attributed to another. A painful echo of the gala night. Midway through Michael's presentation, just as he was showcasing a particularly intricate design for the resort's self-sustaining water system, a design I had spent months perfecting, analyzing complex hydrological models, sketching countless iterations, and even building a small working prototype in my eco-lab, David Chen subtly yet expertly initiated our sequence. He pressed a button on a small disguised remote, sending a silent signal to a sympathetic technician we had discreetly recruited within the event's AV team. Suddenly, a large projection screen behind Michael flickered violently, then went black. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Michael paused, frowning, looking at the screen. Then it reappeared, not with his polished slides, but with a series of raw, unpolished sketches. My sketches. They were dated, some clearly, showing my early handwriting and annotations. My specific notes on sustainable materials and energy flow. My personal design philosophy. A ripple of confusion went through the audience, quickly turning into murmurs. Michael faltered his eyes, darting to the screen, his confident smile wavering. A bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple, his smooth presentation collapsing into disarray. Then a new slide appeared. It was an email exchange. Michael scoffing at my initial proposal. For rainwater harvesting, calling it hippie nonsense, too expensive. Too out there for Vance and Associates to ever consider. Another slide, a memo from Robert to Michael, dated weeks later, discussing adapting Eleanor's more outlandish ideas for commercial viability, essentially giving Michael instructions to sanitize my vision and claim it as his own. A cynical blueprint for theft laid bare for all to see. A hush fell over the room, so profound you could hear a pin drop. The clinking of glasses suddenly absent, replaced by stunned silence. Robert, in the front row, stiffened, his face draining of color, his hand clutching the armrest of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. He looked utterly ill. Michael's voice dwindled, then died completely, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. He stared at the screen, his jaw slack, his carefully constructed persona evaporating, replaced by raw panic and dawning horror. That was my cue. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady, a remarkable calm enveloping me. I rose from my seat in the middle of the audience, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the stunned silence like a bell, amplified by the strategically placed microphone David had arranged. For me, "Good evening, everyone," I began, walking slowly, deliberately towards the podium, my eyes fixed on my father and brother, who looked like deer caught in headlights, their faces contorted in a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. My name is Eleanor Vance, and while Michael has just presented a compelling overview of the Riverbend Eco Resort, I believe there are a few missing details. Details about the true genesis of this project. Details about the actual visionary behind its most innovative elements. I reached the podium, took my place beside a dumbfounded Michael. Spotty language screamed defeat and humiliation, and turned to face the audience. The screen behind us, now under my control, flashed to a new slide, a side-by-side comparison of Michael's current presentation slides with my original. Intricately detailed blueprints, complete with my signature and original date stamps. The parallels were undeniable, the plagiarism blatant, a stark visual indictment that no one in the room could ignore. The self-sustaining water system Michael just described. I continued, my voice measured, devoid of emotion, letting the sheer weight of the evidence speak for itself. That was conceptualized in my Ecolab 3 years ago. A vision born from countless hours of research into arid climate permaculture and sustainable hydrology. The innovative geothermal heating system. That was the core of my thesis project from 6 years ago. A concept my father initially dismissed as impractical and too avant-garde for the Vance brand, only to later quietly integrate it into their grand vision. I moved through the slides, presenting a damning visual history. My original proposals for the biofiltration ponds. Michael's emails dismissing them as over-the-top and unnecessary. Then the exact same designs appearing in his presentation. Weeks later, conveniently relabeled and stripped of my name, I played a short, Clipped audio recording of Michael laughing dismissively at my unrealistic ideas about closed-loop water systems and native plant landscaping. Followed immediately by him presenting those exact ideas as his own in a company. Meeting, his voice booming with false confidence, a stark, audible contrast that sent a shiver through the room. The room was a sea of shocked faces, murmurs, and averted gazes. Whispers of plagiarism, fraud, and unethical conduct ripped through the crowd like wildfire, building into an undeniable chorus. Michael stood like a statue, his face a mask of horror, sweat now pouring down his face. His silk tie suddenly feeling too tight around his constricted throat. Robert had buried his face in his hands, his shoulders slumped in utter defeat. His once imposing posture now completely broken, his empire crumbling around him. I poured my heart and soul into Riverbend. I concluded, my voice rising slightly, tinged with a quiet power that resonated through the grand ballroom, commanding absolute attention. I believed it would be a testament to what Vance and Associates could achieve in sustainable design, a step towards a more responsible future for our built environment. Instead, it became a testament to what my own family was willing to steal, for their own gain, for personal ambition, and inflated egos, at the expense of integrity, truth, and the very spirit of innovation they claimed to uphold. I paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing the full weight of their betrayal to settle on everyone present, a silence more impactful than any outburst. The designs you see before you are indeed groundbreaking. But they are my designs, not Michael's, and certainly not Vance and Associates as they stand today, having been tainted by deception. I stepped back from the podium, leaving Michael standing alone, exposed, his carefully constructed facade crumbling around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the rapid clicking of cameras and the horrified whispers of the industry titans who had just witnessed a public implosion of monumental proportions. The power had shifted. Kay and the Vances were about to feel the full force of the truth they had tried to bury. Kay, a truth that would now reverberate across the entire industry, forever etching their names in infamy. The aftermath of the Riverbend presentation was swift and brutal. The room erupted into chaos, a whirlwind of panicked murmurs, frantic phone calls, and the hurried rustle of departing attendees. Investors, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and dawning anger, began to leave in droves, their briefcases clutched tight, their trust shattered. Promises of future collaborations dissolved into hurried apologies and abrupt departures. As they scrambled to distance themselves from the unfolding scandal, the media, who had been present for the grand unveiling, swarmed the remaining attendees and the fleeing Vance entourage, their questions like vultures tearing at carrion. Mr. Vance, is this true? Ms. Vance, what is your comment on these allegations of plagiarism? Will you be pursuing legal action, Eleanor? Michael, pale and trembling, tried to stammer out an explanation to a few lingering reporters. But his words were swallowed by the cacophony, his reputation evaporating. Before his eyes, Robert, his face contorted in a mask of impotent rage and profound humiliation, grabbed Michael's arm and dragged him out of the room, their retreat a desperate, undignified scramble through the back exit. Caught on a dozen camera phones, solidifying their public disgrace. For days, the news cycle was dominated by the Vance architectural scandal. It was front-page news in the industry trade magazines, a cautionary tale for aspiring architects. Industry forums buzzed with outrage and speculation, dissecting every detail of the presentation. Social media exploded with calls for Vance and Associates to be held accountable. Hashtags like #StolenDesigns, #VanceFraud, and #Justice for Eleanor trending relentlessly across all platforms. The meticulously crafted reputation of the firm, built over 6 decades of seemingly solid, if uninspired, work, crumbled in a matter of hours, replaced by damning headlines of deceit, professional misconduct, and intellectual theft. Architectural awards they had won in previous years were called into question, with several professional organizations initiating reviews. Their past projects were scrutinized under a new critical lens, revealing a pattern of uncredited design, elements and questionable practices that only added fuel to the fire, confirming a long-standing pattern of ethical lapses. My phone, previously silent from my parents, now rang off the hook, a relentless chorus of their desperation. Robert's voicemails shifted from furious threats: "You have destroyed everything, Eleanor. Our family name, our livelihood. You've ruined us. Do you hear me?" To desperate: "Please, please, Eleanor, we can fix this. Just talk to us. We can work something out. Anything. Don't let this destroy us." Susan's texts were a barrage of guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation. "How could you do this to your own family? Eleanor, you're tearing us apart. Your poor father is heartbroken. Your brother is devastated. Think of the shame you've brought upon us." I ignored them all, deleting the voicemails unheard and blocking their numbers. Their desperation was palpable, a testament to the power of the truth I had unleashed. They still didn't grasp that I wasn't just a disgruntled employee. I was their daughter, betrayed on the deepest, most fundamental level. Their concern was solely for their own unraveling, not for the years of emotional and professional damage they had inflicted on me. Their frantic messages underscored how little they understood the true nature of their transgressions, constantly framing themselves as victims. Olivia, my younger sister, was the first one to truly break through the wall of silence. She arrived at my apartment a few days later, unannounced, her usual polished composure completely gone, replaced by raw vulnerability. Her eyes were red from crying, clutching a half-empty box of tissues. "Eleanor," she sobbed, collapsing onto my couch. Her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I saw it happening bit by bit. I just didn't know how bad it was. I was too scared to speak up. Dad always made me feel like I was exaggerating, like I was being disloyal if I questioned anything. He made me feel like I was the problem for even thinking something was off, for not being a good Vance by keeping quiet." She told me about a prestigious scholarship she was supposed to receive for law school. It's a full ride that mysteriously fell through just as Dad was making a large personal investment in a risky venture Michael had brought him. He told me it was just bad luck, or that the foundation changed their minds. But now I wonder if that money was ever even there for me, if he just took it like he took your designs. I almost gave up on law school because he said we couldn't afford it anymore. We talked for hours, piecing together small inconsistencies over the years. The way Michael always seemed to have a brilliant new idea shortly after a private meeting with me. The subtle shifts in Robert's demeanor when I pressed too hard on certain design choices, the constant subtle pressure from Mom to stay in line and not rock the boat or embarrass the family. Olivia even remembered Dad constantly telling her that Vance money stays in Vance hands, a phrase that now felt chillingly predatory, twisted into an excuse for their greed and control. We realized how deeply ingrained the deception was. A systemic family secret built on self-interest and a complete disregard for anyone else's rights or well-being. It was a suffocating truth, but also a liberating one. Grandpa Arthur was my anchor during this tumultuous time, a beacon of unwavering support and wisdom. He visited daily, bringing legal documents for review, calmly discussing the next steps, always with a comforting presence and a steady hand. He had a quiet, grim satisfaction in his eyes, sense of overdue justice finally being served, mixed with genuine sorrow for the firm he had built. "They're in deep trouble, Eleanor," he informed me over a cup of chamomile tea in his sunroom, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the Persian rug. "Key investors are pulling out. Major contracts are being terminated. They're major. Corporate partners are calling for a formal investigation. And the architectural board is launching its own ethics review that could strip Robert of his license entirely." Even their long-standing bank is reviewing their credit lines. He leaned forward, his gaze firm, his voice resolute. This isn't about revenge, Eleanor. This is about justice. About establishing that integrity still matters in this industry, that talent should be rewarded, not stolen. And about your future. You deserve to build your legacy on honest ground, untainted by their lies, a legacy that truly reflects your brilliance. He then unveiled a new layer of their deception, particularly galling revelation, an internal company fund, disguised as a research and development fund, which was actually being used to cover personal expenses for Robert and Michael. Lavish vacations, luxury cars, extravagant renovations to their homes, effectively siphoning off profits that should have been reinvested into the firm, paid as legitimate employee bonuses, or even returned to clients as part of a profit-sharing model. He had suspected it for years, noticing discrepancies in the firm's balance sheets. But now, with the firm's books under public scrutiny and facing a full forensic audit, the fraud was undeniable, a glaring testament to their avarice and profound ethical decay. I founded this firm on integrity, on a handshake and a promise, Grandpa Arthur murmured, his voice heavy with profound disappointment. To see it used for such petty, selfish acts, to be corrupted from within, to become a vehicle for personal enrichment at the expense of its own employees and clients, it sickens me to my core. The legal process began, slow and arduous, yet meticulously executed by David Chen. He filed a formal complaint of intellectual property infringement and corporate fraud against Robert and Michael. The sheer volume of evidence we had, my original dated designs, Grandpa Arthur's detailed journals, the internal communications, the audio recordings, and even testimonials from former disgruntled employees who had witnessed similar patterns of theft and quiet dismissals of their own innovative ideas made their position almost entirely indefensible. Their hastily hired defense team tried every trick in the book, attempting to muddy the waters, discredit me and Grandpa Arthur, accuse us of a personal vendetta driven by jealousy and a desire for fame. They even attempted to claim Michael's business acumen was the true value, rendering my designs secondary. But their arguments were hollow, their defenses crumbling under the weight of irrefutable proof. The industry, once their loyal domain, turned its back on them decisively. Professional associations issued public condemnations. Former clients, embarrassed by their association with the scandal, began to distance themselves, some even publicly, condemning Vance and Associates and shifting their ongoing projects to ethical competitors, leaving the firm with no new business. The once proud Vance and Associates, the firm that had defined my family's existence, the very cornerstone of their identity and social standing, began to unravel with alarming speed. They were forced to lay off dozens of loyal employees, many of whom were now unemployed through no fault of their own, closing branch offices in Boston and Philadelphia. They had to put valuable assets, including their downtown headquarters, up for sale to cover impending legal fees and mounting debts. The grand offices, once a symbol of their power, now felt like a mausoleum, empty, echoing, and stripped bare. The empire built on my grandfather's honest work and sustained by my own stolen innovation was collapsing into dust, leaving a trail of ruined careers and tarnished reputations. And for the first time in years, amidst the chaos, I felt a strange, quiet sense of relief. It wasn't glee, not a malicious joy. It was the calm of seeing a poisoned wound finally being lanced, the malignancy cut out, the truth finally prevailing. The consequences were severe, far-reaching, and undeniably deserved. My vision, my work, my name, they were all coming back. To me, not through their reluctant acknowledgement, but through the undeniable cleansing force of truth. The scales of justice finally were beginning to balance, setting me free from a burden I hadn't realized how heavy it was. I stood in the raw, unfinished space, the scent of fresh paint and sawdust filling the air, A clean, hopeful aroma. Sunlight streamed through the large industrial windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the morning light. A golden haze of possibility. This was it, my new beginning, my own studio. A blank canvas, truly mine this time, free from the shadows of deceit and manipulation. After months of grueling legal battles, the settlement was finally reached. Robert and Michael facing ruin, potential criminal charges for corporate fraud, and the complete destruction of their professional reputations, agreed to a substantial financial compensation for me. This included not only the funds from the innovation pool they had diverted, but also a significant sum acknowledging my intellectual property rights over the Riverbend project, and all other designs they had claimed as their own. Furthermore, they were forced to issue a public apology, published in leading industry journals and on the Architectural Board's website, explicitly crediting me for Riverbend Eco Resort and acknowledging their misconduct. Vance & Associates, already bleeding clients and prestige, declared bankruptcy shortly after, its name tarnished beyond repair. Robert faced severe disciplinary action from the Architectural Board, his license suspended indefinitely, effectively ending his career. Michael, his career aspirations in tatters, disappeared from the public eye, his golden boy image shattered. His reputation irrevocably ruined. The money, though significant, felt secondary. What truly mattered was the official acknowledgement, the public vindication that finally, unequivocally, declared, my work was mine. My vision was valid. My voice was heard. It was a profound liberation, a release from years of silent resentment, self-doubt, and the crippling need for their approval. I could finally breathe freely, unburdened by their expectations and lies. Grandpa Arthur, ever practical and supportive, offered me an initial investment to set up my own firm. Eleanor Vance Eco Designs, he mused, looking at the hastily scrawled sign I'd taped to the wall, his eyes twinkling with pride. I like it, has a ring to it, a ring of honesty and true talent built on solid ground. With his unwavering belief and the funds from the settlement, I was able to transform this empty shell into a state-of-the-art studio. It boasted advanced rendering software, a prototyping lab for building intricate models, and a growing team of passionate young architects who shared my vision for sustainable, ethical design. The space, located in a revitalized industrial district with exposed brick and high ceilings, felt vibrant and alive. A stark contrast to the stifling, antiquated, corporate environment I had left behind. Life took on a vibrant, authentic rhythm I had never known. The chronic stress that had been my constant companion for years, the gnawing anxiety of being overlooked, of having to constantly prove myself, of fighting for every scrap of credit, gradually receded. It was replaced by a newfound confidence, a quiet joy that permeated every aspect of my work. I could finally focus on creating, innovating, pushing the boundaries of green architecture without the stifling weight of corporate politics or familial expectations. My designs were bolder, more imaginative, flowing freely from a place of genuine inspiration, not desperation for approval. Clients sought me out, drawn by my reputation for integrity and innovative, sustainable solutions. My projects were featured in industry magazines, and I was invited to speak at international conferences. Something that had seemed like an unattainable dream just months ago. My relationship with Grandpa Arthur deepened, becoming a beautiful partnership. He visited my studio often, his eyes twinkling as he saw my ideas come to life, offering quiet advice and sharing anecdotes from his own pioneering days. He became my mentor, my sounding board, and my staunchest supporter. This is the legacy. I always dreamed of Eleanor, he said one afternoon, watching me refine a complex solar panel design for a new client, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. It's true innovation, driven by passion, not by greed. This is what Vance & Associates was supposed to be before it lost its way. Olivia, my sister, transformed too. The quiet, compliant girl who had once averted her eyes and avoided conflict now visited me regularly, bringing coffee and offering to help with administrative tasks, eager to learn about ethical business practices. She began to volunteer for environmental causes, inspired by my work and newfound freedom. I spent so long trying to be what Mom and Dad wanted. She confessed one evening, sorting through blueprints in my studio, trying to fit into their mold, trying to earn their approval. Now I just want to be me, like you. You showed me it was possible to stand up for yourself, to define your own path. We forged a new bond, built on honesty and shared values, a sisterhood unburdened by the shadow of our parents' manipulation. She even started taking evening classes in environmental law, finding her own path to make a difference, determined to use her legal skills for good, often discussing her coursework with me. As for Robert and Susan, their financial house of cards had indeed collapsed spectacularly. The large, imposing family home, the very symbol of their carefully constructed prosperity, was foreclosed and sold at auction. Robert found a temporary low-level architectural consulting job for a small, struggling firm on the outskirts of the city, a stark, humiliating contrast to his former CEO title. Susan, unaccustomed to working and devoid of her social network, struggled immensely to find part-time employment, eventually taking a job as a sales associate at a high-end department store. Her social engagements, once the bedrock of her identity and constant pursuit, were now limited to the bare essentials, her former circle of friends and acquaintances having quietly distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. I heard about their struggles through Grandpa Arthur, who, with his innate compassion, offered them minimal, anonymous assistance of few months' rent for a small, two-bedroom apartment in a less affluent neighborhood, just enough to prevent absolute homelessness. "They need to face the consequences, Eleanor," he explained to me, his voice gentle but firm. "But no one deserves to be entirely destitute. My compassion is not enabling their past behavior, but preventing absolute despair. A glimmer of hope that they might, someday, learn from this." I hadn't spoken to my parents directly since the confrontation at the gala. My anger, though dulled by time and success, was still present, a protective barrier. One day, a handwritten letter arrived, addressed in Susan's familiar script, smelling faintly of lavender, her signature scent. 'Twas long, rambling, filled with justifications, self-pity, and a vague, conditional apology. "We know we made mistakes," it read, "but we were under so much pressure to maintain appearances, you don't understand what it's like to live up to Elaine's standards. Michael was so stressed with his own pressures, we just wanted the best. For the family, we thought we were doing what was necessary." I put the letter down. Unread after the first few lines, the familiar narrative of blame and self-pity, too transparent. They still didn't get it. It wasn't about Grandma Elaine. They often confused her with Grandpa Arthur's first wife, a distant cousin. It wasn't about their struggles, which, while real, were largely self-inflicted. It was about my stolen years, my undermined confidence, my dignity, my intellectual property, my future. There was no true remorse, no genuine acknowledgement of the profound emotional and professional harm they had inflicted. It was still, at its core, about them. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer, not discarding it, but putting it away, a reminder of the past. I wasn't ready for reconciliation. Not until they truly understood the depth of their betrayal and showed genuine, consistent change in their actions, not just in their words, maybe never. Healing, I realized, couldn't be rushed and true. Forgiveness required genuine accountability and genuine transformation. Not just regret over being caught. My life had transformed completely. Eleanor Vance Eco Designs was not just surviving, it was thriving, securing major contracts for sustainable urban developments, ecotourism projects, and even innovative greenhousing initiatives for underserved communities. My calendar was filled with exciting client meetings, collaborative design, charrettes, and speaking engagements at prestigious architectural conferences across the country and even internationally. I was doing work I loved, surrounded by a talented and ethical team that respected my vision and building a future I had truly earned, one brick of integrity at a time. The money, the success, the recognition from my peers, it was all wonderful, a tangible reward for years of struggle. But the real restoration was in my spirit. I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed, a resilience that could weather even the deepest betrayal, and the courage to rebuild on my own terms, not just a business, but a life. My name, once whispered in the shadow of Vance and Associates, now stood alone, strong, vibrant, and synonymous with authentic, groundbreaking design. 1 year after the fateful presentation, the one that changed everything, Grandpa Arthur, Olivia, and I gathered at my new studio for a quiet, intimate dinner. The scent of coffee and creativity filled the air, mingled with the aroma of the celebratory meal Olivia and I had cooked. "I've been thinking about legacy," Grandpa Arthur began, his eyes sweeping across my bustling studio, a satisfied smile playing on his lips, not just financial, but ethical. What values do we carry forward? What kind of Vance legacy do we want to create now that the old one has crumbled? We talked for hours, openly, honestly, about trust, communication, and boundaries. We established guidelines for our own family, a new, smaller, healthier family unit. One built on mutual respect, unwavering integrity, and shared purpose. We acknowledged the trauma we had experienced, committed to transparency, and vowed to break the cycle of secrecy and deception that had poisoned our past. We even discussed establishing a new ethical innovation fund within my firm, truly for the benefit of young, talented architects, ensuring they would never face the same injustices I had. "To the Vance family, reimagined," Grandpa Arthur said, raising his coffee cup, his voice filled with quiet pride, a profound sense of hope for the future. "Rebuilt and resilient. May our designs always be as honest as our intentions." As I raised my cup, a deep sense of peace settled over me, a feeling of genuine freedom. The betrayal had nearly broken me. Instead, it had remade me, forged me into a stronger, more authentic version of myself. I had learned to stand firm in my worth, to require honesty from those around me, and to walk away from relationships that undermined my well-being, even when those relationships were with my own parents. The dream that had been stolen from me was not just returned. It was rebuilt, bigger and stronger, on a foundation of truth and self-respect, okay? And for that, strangely enough, I was profoundly grateful. The past was a lesson, not a life sentence. My future, vibrant and clear, was entirely my own. Have you ever had a dream or a passion stolen or undermined by someone you trusted, especially family? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest. Betrayals can ultimately lead to growth and renewal. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes losing what you thought you had is the beginning of finding something truly invaluable, yourself.